Hello. Now, I set out to record what I thought would be a very, very simple science video, in which I'd prove a nice obvious result, and everybody would tell me, oh yes, of course, it's very simple and it's very clear, but it was not to be. So, the beginning of this science video were a couple of comments I had on the video where I introduced this compact PBS terminus. One which, sort of, people told me before I put out the video, no, you need the acceleration tracks, they're important, you need the signals, you need everything. And then I produced it, and of course, the comments I got was, well, it's obvious it works. It's because it has the shortest signal distance, and trains take the least time to escape it. So, and I did get some interesting comments. So, Rusty Walker made a couple of comments that said, well, the thing is, you're using SH25s, and the SH25 I use deliberately for these experiments because it's kind of an everyman sort of train, It's not too powerful, it's not too slow, it's kind of in the middle, it kind of gives fairly valid results. But Rusty said, quite rightly, because I do sometimes test with other powered trains, but said, but surely this result changes. If you have like low powered trains, surely they will need the acceleration tracks more. And if you have high powered trains, maybe they need them less. And also asked, well, but also, what if you had kind of parallel exit tracks? Effect and paint spots seem to be very similar. So why don't you try using one of the co-op designs for a station with parallel exit tracks? So kind of set out to do that. And I thought I was going to do something nice and simple where I show some of the long acceleration tracks and the co-op design, and then this design, which is the co-op design kind of, but plus an actual priority merge, so that half the trains are always travelling at full speed. The problem is in the middle. I then did this design, and this was originally supposed to be a very simple sort of parallel track setup. You see the origins of that, where it has junctions that are not needed. And then I played with it, and I added a bridge. And I came up with this design, and this is something I call the Rulebreaker. And the Rulebreaker basically killed the last 6 or 7 attempts to make one of these videos, because every time I went near it or tried to look at why things happened the way they did, something weird happened. Joy of science. But anyway, let's go through this. I'm going to ignore the Rulebreaker for now. I'm going to go back through the storybook and look at the scores of these, because we want to see, how did these do? Let's do the simple bit of science first. So the control experiment, 1,900 tons a month. That's about what we expect. These short signal caps. The long acceleration tracks, do they help if you have a slow train? No, they don't. As we kind of said, it's because this has a long signal distance, and if the train is slow leaving it, even if it's going faster at this point, it's still using up all this path. So then we get on to the question of, okay, what happens with the parallel tracks? So the first one, the compact parallel station, that does 2,100 tons a month. That's actually fairly good, really, as a station. That's a decent uplift from the compact. And then the Prio. The Prio actually, yes, it was very fiddly to build and get the tuning right so that this train never, ever had to slow down. But it's actually pretty effective. You watch it, it's quite good to watch. You see this train always goes fast. This train never has to kind of slow down. This one does, but, because there's long enough distance, it always gets up to speed before the next one arrives. So it's timed nicely, and you can see, 2,400 tons. This is very much worth building. The other thing with this is you can tune this, and it will work. This will be quite reliable. Even though it's fiddly and annoying to build, it will be quite reliable. But then there's the Rulebreaker. And the Rulebreaker breaks everything we know to be true about how these stations are supposed to work. So you'll see the averages kind of settle down a bit. So why does it break the rules? Well, it has long signal blocks on the entrance. We knew surely that's a problem. It doesn't use the co-op way of doing things. It actually has the bridge on the exit the wrong way, so that the trains are going over it when they're fully loaded. But it's really effective. It's almost as effective as the Prio. And, quite easy to build. But this is very fragile. This is why it's a video ruining creation. Because you see it has, there's lots of nice train movements can happen the second. There's something really key in this, which is this just so happens to be timed just right so that the trains release in a way that this has exactly the same results as the Prio. Trains on this lower line always get to go at full speed. They're never stopped by the trains coming in from this line. This line does stop, but it is a quirk of timing. And it's kind of with these signal gaps. This station, it's very stable. It will recover these timings over multiple attempts, but you can build it with different lengths, and it will still sort of just about work. But every once in a while, you will do something, and the throughput will just catastrophically drop to about 1600, and it's not always obvious why. So this Rulebreaker station is weirdly effective, but it's also weirdly fragile. So unless you're a bed to sort of sit and tweak and play, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. It's a good idea. This is actually probably a better idea, because this you can build reliably. If you know how to build sort of priority setups and you can remember the correct combination of combo signals and exit signals and whatever else, yes, you will get a useful uplift from this. The compact parallel is not quite as good, but it does work fairly well. This is a fairly decent station, and I think you could possibly, you could play with the bridges and probably tweak the throughput a bit more. So this is quite a good station to build as well. So I would say the speed from this science is certainly early game. I would add this to your station repertoire if you need that little bit of extra throughput early game. This is actually a pretty good station. It's not perfect. You can see there are a lot of situations where this train has to wait for this train, and that's why this, which is kind of a variant, not too far from that, performs better because you have this. So sometimes maybe it is worth sort of tweaking this a little bit. So the way the trains work is that these ones, some sort of, there's one path which is always going at full speed, but this is not a reliable thing. This doesn't always happen like this. It's a sort of a quirk as to what you build obeys this rule or doesn't. So that's what happens with trains that are not so powerful. What happens with the powerful trains? So let's go and look at the same map, but with powerful trains. So see the same stations here, and some trains darting through, trains going through on this priority. This priority is slightly different here because the trains are faster, so they don't need as much tracks to make sure they don't ever get slowed down. We have the same, the Rulebreaker still doing its thing. We have this acceleration track, and we have the compact BBS. So let's go in and let's have a look at what's happening with the storybook. Run that for a few months. So with the powerful trains, well, the control is 2,300 more about. The simple acceleration tracks, no, powerful trains don't help it either. It's not performing quite as bad. Interestingly, so the compact parallel is doing 2,300. The Prio is doing 2,300. It's actually a little bit lower than the compact parallel. And the parallel is, let's have a look at this. Let's see how trains are exiting the parallel. Well, actually, I think they're never really waiting for each other. In fact, I wonder if the parallel could probably take another train on it. Here we go. So here's where Timorph breaks his science video by just messing with it. So let's reset that. Let's see how that goes. Okay. Close the storybook and just have a look at this. So are we seeing the same behavior with this? Well, in fact, we're seeing still this possibly could take another train. This is why this is what happens. So I do this, and then everything breaks. So yes, and so we put more trains on that, and I have experimented with this. These don't take any more trains than they currently have. This tends to cause problems, but you can see that this is at its limit because there's a train waiting there. This one might be able to survive, actually. So let's do another 2 on this. Let's make this a fair comparison. Ah, yes. And so this was at its limit. You see now that's a disaster. So let's get rid of that into the depot. Let's get rid of that in the depot. This is something that I don't really go too much into on the science, but actually some of these, they are quite fragile in terms of how many trains can be on them before the throughput collapses. Let's reset the storybook again. Let's see where that takes us. So, let's have a look. So the Prio again has recovered back. Compact Parallel is doing really well. Parallel, now with those more trains. Yes, it really is doing well because it can handle so many trains with this weird quirk. It's actually now become the best of those stations. The other ones, as we see, they can't take more trains, where this one can. So again, this is a really awkward result for me to say, because as you can see, this is not a resilient design. This is a quirk of the spacing and the way that trains enter and exit. So can I in good conscience recommend it? I'm not sure. So this is one that's, yes, so this is one that's going to be quite I think, an interesting science. Let me just tidy this up a bit so that, you can see what it actually should be like. Okay, that's good, nice. So this breaks lots of rules. It's got sharp turns in there. It's got long signal blocks. It's got some bridges which loaded trains have to go over, and yet it's really effective. So there you go. So that's some rather counterintuitive, rather unexpected science results, which is that the best station, the best terminus, actually, when you start adding the parallel tracks, is this really very weird and very broken parallel track. If you get lucky and it times itself in such a way that one of the train lines always runs at full speed. So it's a very kind of challenging one to build, I think. So yes, so but for other things, if you're not going for the absolute most optimal, certainly when you've got fast trains, I'd look at the control experiment 2300. It's like this, as you get late game, this simple station is still, very, 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 very good, high performing, and sort of for the time you spend kind of tweaking a design like this to work effectively, you go, well, I could just build 2 of those. So there we go. That's our science. I finally managed to get through this without changing one piece of track and invalidating multiple minutes of video. So yes, if there's anything else you would like to see me cover, then please leave it in the comments below, and I'm sure I await the response as to why this is obviously a highly effective station. I noticed actually it's really interesting because it's actually just swapped the trains. Josh, don't look at it. It will just invalidate everything you've done. But yeah. There we go. I shall see you in a future video.